Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Gizmo Joe. Today we're going to be taking a look at some third-party Joy-Con controllers for the Nintendo Switch. If you're anything like me, you think the Nintendo Switch is an amazing piece of hardware. It's great, you can play it on your big screen TV, you can take it with you, etc., etc. But there's one big problem with it, and that's the teeny tiny little buttons and analog sticks. They really drive me nuts, especially if you're trying to use these guys, like this. I don't know about you, but I get sort of carpal tunnel syndrome. I don't even think I really have huge hands. I mean, I don't know. Some people in comments have said that I do, but I don't think I do. Anyway, it can be a real pain to use these guys. And so what we're going to be taking a look at today is a third-party option. So this is a NYXI controller. Now, full disclosure, the folks over at NYXI sent me this as a review unit. I really appreciate that. But again, all of my opinions and the views that I express in this video are my own, so I'm not obligated to say anything that I don't want to. Anyway, the NYXI controller, as you can see, comes in just a standard sort of box. Now, obviously, my box got pretty beat up in shipping. But before we open it up, let's take a look at it. So obviously you get the controller on the front. Now my controller is actually white. I believe they call it the milk version. So there's a whole bunch of different colors and options and stuff on the NYXI website. I'll leave a link down in the description so you guys can check out all the different options. But the one that they sent me is the white one. But it looks pretty much like this. So as you can see, they're substantial sort of controllers. Now the big thing with these guys is that they do have these sort of RGB lighting options, which is pretty cool, but we'll take a look at that in a second. Now, if we open the box, there's not much in here. Full disclosure, I already opened it, but just to make sure everything was working, and I wanted to make sure that these guys were charged up. But anyway, the box I'm just going to toss off to the side for now because it's not really important that we take a look at it. First, there's the little NYXI bridge. We've got a USB-C cable for charging, and then here's the actual Joy-Cons themselves. They come in this sort of like little plasticky protector, I guess. But like I said, my box got beat up, but everything on the inside was totally fine. Now, I'm going to set these off to the side for a second. I do want to talk about them in depth, and I'll give you guys an opportunity to take a look at them. But what I want to do is take a look at this manual. It's not super necessary to read this. There's a couple features about this particular controller that obviously you'll want to take a look at the manual to see how they work, but I'll run through them anyway. Now, the actual Joy-Cons themselves, as you can see, they're fairly substantial. If we take a look compared to the standard Switch controller, you'll notice that it is significantly bigger. Now, what I like about these is that they're much more comfortable to hold in the hands compared to these guys. Obviously the Switch controllers, they're not terrible, but they are quite sort of slippery, I find. There's not much grip there, and so I just, I find it difficult to sort of hold on to these and make them feel comfortable. This, on the other hand, sort of feels more like, to be honest with you, like sort of like an Xbox controller. It has that sort of a nice palm feel. It fits sort of in your hand really nicely. And, your fingers have a place to sort of just grip onto. And so, so they just sort of fit nicely in each hand. Now, the build quality on these guys seems very good. The buttons are sufficiently clicky without being too loud. But, like when I press the button, it actually feels like I'm pressing a button, which is nice. We've basically got, your home button, your screen capture button, an actual D-pad, which is a definite improvement over the sort of original Switches, like little, directional buttons. So having a D-pad, especially for, anything, whether it's a platformer or a fighting game or something like that, to have a substantial D-pad is way preferable to the original controller. I will say, though, that the D-pad, while serviceable, doesn't feel as good as some of the other controllers. The D-pad here doesn't feel fantastic, but it feels good, I'll say. The analog sticks themselves are springy. They feel pretty good. The shoulder buttons up on the top, sufficiently springy. If we flick it over, you'll notice that there's some different buttons on the back. So you've got these two sort of paddle buttons, or I'm not really sure what you would call them, but they're the back buttons here. Now, these buttons are assignable. So any of the shoulder buttons, any of the face buttons can be assigned to these two. The way that you do it is you basically hold down, I think it's the M key here, press the button that you want to assign, and then press this button here, and that will assign it. The thing is, when you pop these onto your Switch, if you go into your Switch's settings or whatever to take a look at the controller options, you won't see these buttons. It will not register these extra buttons that the NYXI controllers have. So you have to do it all through within the hardware. There's no way to do it sort of in the Switch itself, which I think is a bit disappointing. I would have liked to have seen, I don't know if that's like a Nintendo firmware issue or, whatever, especially since it's a third-party controller. But it is kind of a pain because there's nothing sort of on screen, nothing I can mess around with in the settings of my Switch to make sure that these programmable buttons are what I want them to be. Like I said before, they do rumble, so each Joy-Con has a motor on the inside. I will say that the motor is pretty substantial. So if you're not huge into vibration, you're definitely going to want to turn that down. There's a way to do it via the hardware. I think out of the box, the manual says that they're set to about 50%, and if that's the case, I wouldn't want to even attempt to use this at 100% because they're pretty shaky and they're actually pretty loud as well. Now, as far as the weight, they're incredibly light. So they're made of all plastic. Again, good build quality, but they don't feel like they weigh much. For me, they feel pretty solid. So even though they're all plastic, they feel pretty good. They don't feel cheap. They don't feel like they're made of inferior sort of components or anything like that. But like in comparison, like the standard Joy-Con, I would say, is heavier than the NYXI Joy-Con. And I mean, when you look at the size difference, that's pretty wild. The battery on the inside of these guys, I think it's 400 milliamp hours. I think that's what the documentation says. NYXI says that you'll get about 8 hours from a full charge, and to charge them, it takes about 2 hours. To charge them, there's little USB-C ports on either Joy-Con, so you can just charge them, and you'll see the little indicator buttons here, or sorry, the indicator lights go off when they're charged up, or when you have it actually attached, these Joy-Cons attached to the Switch itself will give these guys a charge. So you've got a couple extra features. You've got a turbo function. You've got this mappable back button here. Everything is pretty good. Now, one of the best things I think about these third-party controllers is that basically they work pretty much right off the bat. So as soon as you slide these bad boys onto your Switch is going to recognize it, and you'll be able to use it pretty much immediately. So you can see here, now you'll notice that one side has this sort of rainbow RGB and one side has this just solid red color. Now I can change that fairly easily. The way that I do it is I hit that T button or the turbo button, and then what I can do is I can kind of Okay, so as you can see, as soon as we slide the Joy-Cons onto the Switch console itself, there's no real configuration that needs to be done. Everything just sort of works. They pair automatically. It's good to go pretty much. And let's just fire up some Donkey Kong. I'll show you some gameplay. But yeah, everything works. All the buttons work. I've been using these Joy-Cons for, the past few days. And like I said, everything's functioning properly. There's no analog control stick drift. All the buttons are, as they should function. And everything is pretty good. So let's just get into the game and check this guy out. Now, I will say that trying to play while watching through a camera is not ideal, so don't judge me, please. As you can see, I'm not performing very well. Now, if you're wondering what that sound is, that is actually the rumble motor in the Joy-Con. It is, like I said, pretty loud, and it can be somewhat distracting. So, yeah, if you're not a fan of that, then I would suggest shutting it off. But as you can see, you know, this is working fairly well. There's really no issues. All the buttons function as they should. They all feel really nice. There's no input lag. There's nothing. Any poor performance is literally on my part. It doesn't have anything to do with the controller. So as I mentioned before, like if you take a look on the back here, there is a turbo function. So you would hold that T button down and then basically press whatever button you wanted to be turbo. You could also press it again, I believe, to make it an automatic turbo so that you don't even have to touch the button. And then if you want to unassign that turbo function, you just hit the T button again and whatever button was assigned to turbo. What I want to do is I just want to quickly show you how to detach these. So obviously we took a look and we were able to just attach them by sliding them onto the console itself. But like the standard Joy-Cons, what you're going to want to do is press this little black button here, press that, and then you'll be able to remove the controller. Now, once you slide these guys onto your Switch, you will be able to, they'll essentially be paired, so you can use them sort of independently as well. So like if we take a look here, you'll notice that I can still control everything. It's super awkward holding these guys like this, by the way. So, but obviously it's doable. You can play using just the one Joy-Con. I wouldn't really recommend it because, like I said, it doesn't feel great because it's just the way that the controller is designed. But again, you know, when you use the normal Joy-Cons, I would say when you use them in this sort of mode, it feels a little bit better. This guy, because you have this giant sort of protrusion that's really designed for the palm of your hand, when you're holding it sideways like this, it feels super awkward and weird. Now, like I said before, if you wanted to change the RGB here, what you do is you press in that T button, and what you see here is I can change all the colors. I believe there's 8, so there's a red, there's an orange, there's a green, there's a blue, there's a sort of rainbow, there's an indigo, a purpley one. So there's a bunch of different options, but you know, that's a nice little touch, especially if you're playing in sort of a darkened room. Having the RGB options are fun. Now you can use both of these controllers sort of independently of one another, like I said before, but they're not really designed for that. They're designed more to be used with the console itself, and I'm having a really good time with them. Like I said, you know, the build quality is quite good. I'm happy with the battery life so far. The vibration is probably the only thing that I'd really complain about. It is a bit too strong for my liking, but you know, obviously to each their own. But I think the controllers themselves feel really, really nice in the hands, and that's super important for me because I really dislike the Switch Joy-Cons, the standard ones. Now, obviously, what I do want to mention is that you can use this controller with the bridge. So the bridge just functions exactly like the Nintendo one, and basically what you do is you find the slot for the rail. It just clips on. Again, find the slot for the rail, clips on, and there you go, you're ready to roll. Now, what you'll see is that these indicator lights here are the ones that you would normally see on the inside of the controller. Like I said, if you're looking for something that fits in the hands really, really nicely, and that's going to be the big selling point here, the NYXI Joy-Cons are an excellent option. Definitely for people who have larger hands. You know, it's just way more comfortable to hold than the stock standard Joy-Cons. You have a proper D button or D-pad. The button placement is identical to your standard Switch. So, I mean, you know, if you're used to where everything is laid out, that's great. You've got these programmable buttons on the back, which, again, your mileage may vary. For me, I didn't find myself using it all that much. But it just feels so much nicer to hold in the hand compared to your standard Joy-Cons. Now, the other thing that I think you have to sort of be aware of if you're going to shell out for one of these is that, if you've got a Nintendo Switch case, these Joy-Cons are not going to fit into the case. So you're probably going to have to invest in a new one, which is a bit of a bummer, but well worth it for just the comfort. I find myself like, if I'm playing, Breath of the Wild or whatever, I'm playing for hours on end, and my hands get so cramped using these tiny little controllers. It actually really diminishes my overall experience. And what I've found with the sort of NYXI Joy-Cons is that I'm not getting that same sort of fatigue. Obviously, it feels a lot better, and it just allows me to play for longer periods of time and just really enjoy myself more. So again, there's some superfluous features in here. Like I said, the RGB stuff doesn't excite me a lot, but it's cool looking. But again, your opinion may vary. The turbo function I don't really find myself using, and these programmable back buttons don't really do anything for me either. I just don't really have any need for them. Obviously, you may have a different opinion, but really what you're paying for here is the form factor and the comfort of the controller itself. And in that regard, I think NYXI has done an excellent job. Like I said, it reminds me of sort of the Xbox controller in the way that it feels. And I mean, me personally, I prefer the Xbox controller to Sony, to Nintendo, obviously everything else. I just think it's a really nice feeling controller, and this has a similar sort of feel. So the NYXI controller is fantastic. I would highly recommend to anyone looking for larger Joy-Cons that 100% more comfortable. But anyway, that's going to do it. Like I said, thanks to NYXI for sending through a review unit. I did not know that these guys even existed before they reached out, so I'm glad that they did, because I'm really loving the form factor and the design in this particular controller. I'll leave a link down in the description in case you guys want to grab one for yourself. They're pretty cheap, so I mean, that's another thing too. I thought that these guys, with the features that they had, were going to be quite expensive, but they're really not. I think they are around 50 Australian dollars, and usually they're on sale. So keep your eyes peeled. They come in a variety of different colors, and yeah, I think it's definitely worth your cash. Excellent design. Anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks so much for watching. This is Gizmo Joe, signing off.